Welcome back to the channel, everybody. My name is Void, and today's video is going to be a bit different. We're going to be going across the evolution of every Souls game, FromSoft game, whatever you want to call it. Strictly the Souls-like games, right? So Demon Souls all the way up to Elden Ring, Nightring. Now, there's a lot of differences. Too many to cover in one video without making it over 3 hours long. So we're gonna narrow it down a little bit more, focus on maybe just the major differences. So if you're new to the channel, feel free to subscribe, stick around, take a seat at the bonfire, settle down, and leave a like if you enjoy the video. Anyways, without further ado, let's get into this. To start, I think we need to lay some ground rules. What are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about level design, gameplay, and stats. Those are the three most important things, and really the three biggest things that change across the games. How the game is played, obviously, how the game is navigated, and of course, the stats behind the game. So, starting with the progenitor, we have Demon Souls. Now, Demon Souls, you'll love to hate it. It's very rudimentary, very basic, and honestly frustrating for the sake of frustrating, but can't hate on it too much. After all, it is Father. It is the original. Without Demon Souls, we don't have peak like Bloodborne or Elden Ring. So, you win some, you lose some. Starting out with level design, I think the main thing that separates Demon Souls, say, from any other Souls game is the difficulty comes from the level. Now, don't get me wrong, Miyazaki has plenty of other tricks, right? Plenty of other enemies hiding behind corners and every other game, but this game in particular, the walkways are extremely narrow. Everything is maybe about 1 to 2 enemies wide, and there's often about 1 to 5 enemies in the walkway. Just talk about the lead up to the monk fight. Oh my gosh, why did he put the stupid squid brain D&D characters all along the staircase to get to the boss? Now, the boss itself, extremely easy, and that's the thing you're gonna see with Demon Souls, is the bosses themselves are extremely easy and often very gimmicky. Very few of them, maybe besides Old King Allant, the one fire demon, can't remember his name. Besides a couple of those guys, most of these are gimmick bosses. Look at the Dragon God or whatever, one of the most hype looking fights, and I remember seeing the trailer and losing my mind thinking that's gonna be cool, but yeah, in actuality, not so much. So most of the fights are very, very quick. Like I said, they're gimmicks. They usually get done within, a couple of minutes or so. But the real challenge comes from the very unforgiving walk-up. There aren't too many shortcuts, and the walk-up, regardless, even with shortcuts oftentimes, is still very long and very hard. Now, if we're to focus on the gameplay aspect of it, of course, it's the most rudimentary, right? You have your standard roll pattern, right? Your left, right, forward, backwards. And it's mostly, it's not really like the later games where it's very fast-paced. It's very slow pace. You kind of roll, you block hits. It's very similar to Dark Souls 1 in the fact that shields actually are a viable strategy. But then again, like I said, you probably won't even need them during the boss fight. The most annoying thing about this, really though, is the healing items. There's 30,000 different healing items, and they all suck, and they're farmable. I don't know why. I try to understand, but I can't. But yeah, healing items in this game suck. You're also stationary while healing, which, believe it or not, get this, also sucks. They have other things like weapon durability, but like I said, we're not going to go super into it. We're just going to talk about the major differences, right? The major things. So, main differences, level design, very linear. Bosses are very gimmicky. The level itself is the hardest challenge. That's where the difficulty comes from. It's the challenge of the level. Then we have the first of the Souls games, Dark Souls 1. Now, Dark Souls 1 is a beautiful game, and it's a masterclass in showing you how to build levels. Dark Souls 1, in my opinion, has still to this date the best level design of any of the Souls games. Any Souls game, doesn't matter, Elden Ring, Bloodborne, doesn't matter, it has the best level design. Everything in the game is very interconnected, and you're given a lot of player freedom. You can really choose where you want to go, whether it be going underneath, whether it be going straight to the left, you can go behind. You got so many different directions, so many different places that the game can take you. And it's all, like I said, so well done and interconnected. You never once feel really lost. You really do feel like just this open world for you to explore. And I love the world of Dark Souls 1 because to me, it's quite a feeling that they haven't really managed to recapture or redo since. And I think it's fantasy. Now, Dark Souls 3, it has a lot of the same locations, but it's all, run down and dark and decayed. That's the point of the game, right? So it's much more of a dark fantasy, but Dark Souls 1, it still feels like the world is alive and worth fighting for. It still doesn't feel totally dark fantasy. Now there's elements of that, don't get me wrong, but it still feels very kind of high fantasy. You have gleaming towers of Aaron Orlando, all the way to the fiery pits, and you have so much unique levels. The Seath the Scaleless and his entire level is my favorite. I love the library and the blues and the whites. All those colors are just amazing, and you don't really get this feeling many other places. Now, level design, like I said, very open, very free, and there's a lot of shortcuts, and thankfully we have bonfires, and coming with bonfires we have rechargeable healing items that are not farmable. Thank you, a step in the right direction. Now unfortunately, you still have to stand still while healing. Unfortunately, that change carries over to Dark Souls 2. But in terms of gameplay, once again, it's very similar to Demon's Souls, maybe slight evolution of the combat. Really the biggest change is going to be the bosses. The bosses are no longer, get this, aids. They're no longer just gimmicks. They're actually fun. Who'd have thought? Dodging and attacking is a good game choice. But I'm being overly critical. It was their second entry to the series, but the gameplay of the bosses was much more engaging. You have gank bosses like Bell Tower Gargoyles. You have other bosses where it's actually fair and fun 1v1s. And then you have certain bosses where a lot of them are kind of have arena side effects. I don't know why. A lot of gank bosses as well. Skeletons. Yeah. That sums up really the differences between Dark Souls 1 and Demon's Souls. There's really not any major differences. Like I said, we're not going super in depth. We're just going to talk about really the level and the bosses for the most part. Now, Dark Souls 2, a very controversial game. But you know what I'm going to say? I'm standing on business. I love Dark Souls 2. That's right, I'm a Dark Souls 2 defender. All of you can go eat a big one. I don't care. I love Dark Souls 2. You're wrong. My opinion's the only one that matters. It's my video, therefore I'm right. Dark Souls 2 is a great game. Yes, AAP is a weird and bad stat, but honestly, you level it up to like 20, 25 and you're good. You really don't have to worry about it. You just level it up and you're done. Now, take everything I said though about Dark Souls 1's level design and throw it out the window. So imagine how smooth and how it actually made sense. It was interconnected. Yeah, not so much with Dark Souls 2. Dark Souls 2, everything is kind of just randomly put there. I've played the game, I think, this is my third playthrough now, and I'm doing the DLC, and it is still just as confusing as before. I don't know how to do this. I don't know where things go. It is so bafflingly confusing. I have to consult my friends so often, asking them, where do I go? Because it doesn't even seem like people want to make tutorials about the game because I can't even find them. So I still like the overall levels once you find them. Overall, still nice once you find them. Problem is finding them because the game is very random with where they place things. It's doesn't make sense like Dark Souls 1. It's not super interconnected. Now, Dark Souls 2 does have a lot of unique locations, and that's what I think I love about Dark Souls 2, is its level design is very unique. Dark Souls 2, it has such unique locations, I feel like almost more so on the level really of Dark Souls 1. It's something, we'll get to it later, but Dark Souls 3 I find lacking. Imagine Demon's Souls and Dark Souls 1 had a baby. That's Dark Souls 2's level design. So take everything I said about Demon's Souls and how its level difficulty came from the level design, and then take all I said about the uniqueness and all that kind of stuff about Dark Souls 1 and apply that to Dark Souls 2. You have locations where it's just walk-ups, enemies placed in quite literally the worst location, but we have to move on. We spent enough time yapping about Dark Souls 2, and, well, quite frankly, it's got me depressed. I need something to cure that. Bloodborne. Bloodborne is a masterclass in everything gameplay. Now, level design, I think Bloodborne takes inspiration more so from Dark Souls 2, to be honest. Not nearly as... I don't think it's as centered as, say, Dark Souls 1. Like I said, nothing can compare to Dark Souls 1. Dark Souls 1 was just simply the best built level. It was very interconnected, like I said. Everything made sense. It was linear, but at the same time, really not. You had a lot of open world and freedom of expression as to where to go. Where it has its similarities to Dark Souls 2, I think, are from the fact that it's kind of spread out. It's not super duper linear. I think there's a lot of paths that kind of lead, like for example, Old Yarnum, that entire area, it's really just optional. You can play through the game and never go there, and you can miss out on several bosses that are there. You don't have to go there. The Choir, once again, that area, you don't have to go there. You can skip and go through the playthrough and never go there. There are a lot of areas that are like that in Bloodborne. Another one, the Nightmare, once again, an area you don't have to go to, and you can totally avoid. So, that's kind of what I mean when I say it has a lot of similarities to Dark Souls 2, in the fact that there's just a lot of areas that you can kind of avoid or you don't really need, or maybe they don't really lead to anywhere. Like, whereas Dark Souls 1, every area led to somewhere else. There weren't really a lot of dead ends. Bloodborne's level design, peak. It's gameplay. Now, this is the biggest difference. This is the first curveball FromSoft really decided to throw everybody. Long gone are the days of the shield. In fact, they have a shield, but it's really referenced as a joke. The wooden shield. It doesn't protect much against anything. It's terrible. It's trash. You would not use it. So instead, they opt a parry system. Instead now, you have a blick. You got the gun. You got the strap, the 9-iron, the 6-piece, whatever you want to call it, right? You got it. The big iron on your hip, enemy comes swinging at you, you shoot the gun, they get vulnerable, you can do a visceral attack. So it encourages you to be a lot more proactive in the gameplay, rather than kind of just sitting back behind a shield. Another point of encouragement, the rally system. Now, if you are damaged, you can get health back. But in order to get health back, you have to do damage to the boss. So it encourages you to stick close to that boss, take damage, instantly hit them back, take damage, instantly hit them back, so on and so forth. And your dodges are a lot faster. It's no longer roll dodging, it's rather a dash. The gameplay of the bosses is much more fast-paced and much more brutal. They will punish you very hard if you sit back and just wait. If you try to sit back and you're playing a lot of slow, they will punish you. That boss does not have any chill. It's way faster than anything you've seen before, and it hits way harder than anything you've seen before. Magic has also taken a step back. I think they still have the arcane system, but when you compare it to really any of the other games, it's very underdeveloped, and you really don't utilize it. At least I haven't. I mean, my character runs a large arcane build, but mainly because I want to use Ludwig's greatsword. But beyond that, the magic itself is honestly pretty weak, and it's not really that good of a system. But I think that once again is all intentional, as they want to create an atmosphere of, like a cornered animal, and the fight is very visceral and very fast paced. Then you have Dark Souls 3. Now, Dark Souls 3 is like Bloodborne, and Dark Souls 1 had a baby. There's a lot of babies being made. You can see a lot of the inspiration being drawn across these games. Now, Dark Souls 3's genius is it takes all the stuff I said about Dark Souls 1, really, but it brings it to the modern era. So the combat gets a lot smoother, and it's a lot more fast-paced like Bloodborne. I really didn't find myself using shields all that much. I mean, I had a shield, but I didn't really crutch behind it like I did in Dark Souls 1. In Dark Souls 3, the bosses are much more fast-paced, they're much more similar to Bloodborne with the way the gameplay is, and the level design is honestly very similar to Bloodborne. In fact, I would argue that Dark Souls 3 at the end of the day really is just Bloodborne in Dark Souls. I would really say that. I think, of course, now it is missing things like the rally system, right? Like the parries, all that kind of stuff. But the core gameplay, the still fast-paced drive, is still there. Bosses will punish you for sticking out in the back. You can't really just hide behind a shield the entire time like you could with older games. You're encouraged to be much more fast-paced, much more up close. And like I said, the level design is very akin to Bloodborne, where it kind of has a lot of locations you can just skip, a lot of locations that aren't needed. To me, I think the game doesn't have as magical of a feeling as Dark Souls 1 and 2. And I guess you could say that's intentional, right? The world is dying, is dead at this point, really. So it's supposed to be kind of this really, really dark fantasy at this point, but still do kind of miss those super unique locations of Dark Souls 1. But overall, like I said, it's a great game, an amazing game. Very fast-paced, very similar to, like I said, Bloodborne and Dark Souls 1. Then we have Sekiro. Now, Sekiro is the biggest curveball, and one, for whatever reason, I know FromSoft just hates money, I guess, they refuse to do anything with. I am the delusional fan, waiting on the Lady Tomo. I'm waiting on that DLC that I know we're gonna get. Trust me. But, for whatever reason, they refuse to do anything with it, and it's annoying, because the gameplay was the most unique thing we have ever seen. Take literally everything you know and throw it away. It is now a rapid, fast-paced, almost beat-type game. It is very parry with the beat of the combat, the flow of the combat type game. It's way different. You have ninja tools now, you have certain skills you can learn. There's boss replay system, which, once again, a genius concept that they've just totally abandoned and never brought back again. Great. I mean, Remembrances, right there in the name of the souls you get from the Elden Ring bosses. So why not make a Remembrance boss fight? It would make sense even lore-wise. Sekiro is so unique compared to any of the other Souls games. Like I said, its combat is blindingly different. It relies on parries and tools and skills compared to any of the other games, and you don't have multiple weapons. You just have one weapon. You have a katana, that's it. Your starting weapon, you can upgrade its damage, but that's really it. You have some tools to help you out, but unlike, Bloodborne, where you have trick weapons and all these other things, you don't really have that in Sekiro. You just have the one katana. Now the level design, I think, is kind of on par with Dark Souls 1. It's very interconnected, but very, still not has quite said as good as Dark Souls 1, but it's very open world in that aspect of where do you want to go. I also love the fact that the game has an actual story. This is the first time we've really had a solid character-driven story. Now, is it the best thing ever? Maybe, but it's an actual story nonetheless. You have an actual character who has a voice, goals, motivations. You have an actual cast and crew of characters that are dedicated and you can talk to. It's very interesting. And once again, it's such a shame we never got to see this. And it's multiple endings, very unique, very fun. Now granted, other games have multiple endings, but I feel like these are a bit different because, well, it's character driven. So it's your character choosing multiple different ways to go about the story and its events. Entering the very modern era, we have Elden Ring. The biggest difference, of course, when it comes to level design, obviously, open world. It is an open world game giving players true freedom as to where they want to go and what they want to do and explore. There's hundreds of caverns and mini bosses and things scattered across the map, so I don't really need to explain to you. If you've played it, you've played it, right? The levels themselves are also still supremely done. They kind of made it where it's very open world, but within those open worlds you have these level zones, if you will, right? So Raya Lucaria, Volcano Manor, many places, right? I could Beneath the Erdtree. There's so many, different places and locations, and they're all super unique. We haven't really seen this really, once again, back to Dark Souls 1. If you ask me, Elden Ring is a great amalgamation of all the other games. It is combining every game that they've made up to that point into one game. You can see traces of Dark Souls 2 with its weapon stancing. You can see traces of Dark Souls 1, of course, with the level design, like the actual levels and its uniqueness. You can see traces of Bloodborne with the speed of combat that the games have kind of just adopted to nowadays. There's even Bloodborne with Malenia's Great Rune. You can even get a semi-esque Bloodborne effect, a rally system. Like I said, you can really go back and point at and see something from every Souls game in this game. And that's what I think makes Elden Ring so universally loved and enjoyed, is that fact. There's so much build variety in terms of the actual gameplay you can do. I think this is the first time genuinely, truly anything is viable. I think many times before they were kind of just okay. Like Magic in the old games, kind of okay. You could do it, but it was very weird. I don't know who did it, honestly. I never did it. Maybe I'm sleeping on it. We'll see. But Elden Ring, man. The magic and the amount of tomes and spells you have at your disposal is insane. The bleed builds, the dex builds, you can craft your own weapons. There's just so much to this game and so much replay value because of the different styles you do. Heck, my last playthrough, I was cosplaying as Yuta. That was my entire thing. I did an entire Yuta, so I got armor that looked like him. My weapons and build were all like him, and it actually made sense. So it was like I was playing this JJK character in Elden Ring. Then then after that, I went and did a Makima playthrough, which is harder to make work, but you still do what you do, right? And I think that's where Elden Ring's biggest strength is, and what separates it really from the other games is that uniqueness and replayability due to its gameplay being so open. You can really do anything. The gameplay exploration, I think, is just as open as the open world aspect of it. You can do anything, anything's viable, anything can be used, and it's just fun. The weapon arts in the game, so much fun. Lastly, you have Night Ring. Now, Night Ring is, once again, another curveball, because Miyazaki, he loves his curveballs. So this game is a roguelike, meaning the levels are these kind of randomly generated battle royale-esque maps. You get dropped in on a bird and you're chose go explore as the ring gets smaller and smaller and collect loot. Very similar kind of to the battle royale, and you fight bosses that get progressively more difficult as the nights continue. As for map exploration, this means there really isn't much to talk about. You kind of have, like I said, just a randomly generated map. It can have different features and land masses depending on what day you decide to attack, where you are in the story, those kind of things. So, like I said, map-wise, there's really not much to talk about. You just get in there and you explore. But Very different compared to any other Souls game. Obviously, though, it is an Elden Ring game, so it does have a very similar style and look, obviously, as Elden Ring, and many of the enemies are from Elden Ring. But what really separates the game, makes it interesting, of course, besides just the roguelike aspects of it, are, I think, the characters. You actually have, once again, like Sekiro, a dedicated cast and crew of characters. Now, is it as explored as Sekiro? I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think connections are as personal, but there are intermittent stories that you can do for your characters that do actually deepen those connections and characters. I played Revenant, and learning about her backstory was really awesome and really cool to see my character kind of grow with these people, especially if you interacted with them and talked to them during the different days. So it was actually pretty nice having a community again and having people to talk to. And this is a direction I really hope FromSoft chooses to explore, as I think it's something they really haven't done with your traditional Souls-like game. You know, rather than going into a dead and decaying world, let us go into something more lively with people and more things that I can actually talk to and interact to. And hopefully where they all don't end up dying in the end. Gameplay, though, it's pretty similar except to Elden Ring. There's a bunch of different builds you can do. Each character has their own strengths and weaknesses. Like I said, it's just like Elden Ring, really, but you make Elden Ring into a roguelike. So, same kind of stuff with the whole spell variety, all that kind of stuff, but rather than you getting to customize your character to build into whatever you want to build into, it's more so you can make your character be the best version of that build that they provide you, if that makes any sense. Let me know if there's anything you think I missed, anything I should explore into greater detail. Like I said, I know I kind of touched up and sped ran this list. I didn't want to make this a super long video. I'm already looking at the video time and it's already getting long enough, longer than I really wanted. But like I said, I would love to go into further detail. If I make part 2, maybe I'll make a part 2 and that video will be a bit more in detail and in depth. Let me know what you think of the video. If you liked it, like I said, leave a like. Feel free to subscribe. But anyways, that's all I got for you today. Stay safe. Stay sexy. Bye-bye.